The $230,000 basement. My name is Tessa Whitmore. I am 32 years old. For 8 years, I paid my parents $2,400 a month in rent to live in the basement of the very house where I grew up. They said it was market price. They said they were still paying the mortgage. They said I should be grateful they let me stay. And I believed them. Because that's what a daughter does. She trusts her parents. But then one day, a neighbor said something to me that shattered my entire life. Zero, the moment everything changed. Last month, I stepped outside to grab the mail. My 2-year-old neighbor, Dorothy Brennan, was watering her plants by the fence. She smiled at me. Your parents must be very proud to own that house outright now. I laughed politely. What do you mean? Mrs. Brennan tilted her head. Oh, you didn't know? That mortgage was paid off back in 2014. I froze, still holding the envelope. 1 year. Just 1 year before I started paying rent. I started paying in June 2015. 8 years. $2,400 a month. For a mortgage? That didn't exist. That night, I hired a forensic accountant. What he discovered didn't just explain where my money went. It also revealed who helped my parents hide everything. The beige house. I grew up in a beige colonial house in Binmar, a suburb outside Philadelphia. From the outside, it was the picture of perfection. Trimmed lawns, white fences, successful middle-class families, and secrets hidden behind closed doors. From the outside, the Whitmore family looked completely normal. My father, Richard Whitmore, was a retired mechanical engineer. He spoke with a voice that never allowed doubt. To him, everything was right or wrong, no gray areas. My mother, Diane Whitmore, was a homemaker, but she had a special talent. She could use guilt like a surgical knife. Gentle, precise, and very painful. And then there was my sister, Meredith Whitmore, 3 years older than me, blonde, confident, perfect. In my family, Meredith was the sun. Everything revolved around her. The golden child and the other one. Meredith was the golden child. And I was the other one. I still remember a dinner when I was 17 years old. Our whole family was eating together. I had just received my college acceptance letter. I handed the letter to my father. He glanced at it, then set it on the table. Meredith just received a full scholarship. He said it like it was the most important news in the world. Everyone clapped. I stared at the chicken on my plate. I got 50% tuition, I said quietly. My father didn't even look up. Meredith got 100%. That was it. Conversation over. Years later, I discovered the truth. Meredith never had a scholarship. My parents paid her entire tuition. They only lied to make me believe one thing. I mattered less. That was the hierarchy of the Whitmore family. Meredith was the investment. And me, I was the excess. The way my mother made me feel guilty. My mother rarely yelled. She had another method. Whenever I cried, she would say, Tessa, you're too sensitive. You need to toughen up. The world out there won't spoil you like we do. Spoil me. As if feeding me and letting me live there was an extraordinary act of generosity. Slowly, I started to believe something very simple. I owed them. I owed them for existing. I owed them for not being as talented as Meredith. I owed them for being harder to love. What I didn't know then was that belief would cost me almost $250,000. May 2015. I graduated with a degree in accounting and $42,000 in student debt. I submitted 63 job applications, got FIRA callbacks, and finally, one job. Junior accountant at a nonprofit called Horizon Community Foundation. Starting salary, $38,000 a year. After taxes, about $2,600 a month. One evening, my mother called me. You should move back home, save money, pay off your student loans. It sounded reasonable. Rent in Philadelphia was expensive, and my parents' basement had a separate entrance. I could have privacy. I could save money. At least, that's what I thought. The rental agreement. The day I moved my things back home, my father placed a sheet of paper on the kitchen table. There's something we need to discuss, he said. We're not a charity. The paper looked official. A heading, typed text, $2,400 per month. I stared at the number. That's almost my entire salary. My father shrugged. Then you'll learn to manage your money better. He looked directly at me. We still have to pay the mortgage. You think housing is free? My mother placed her hand on my shoulder. We're helping you, sweetheart. Landlords out there don't cook for you. Landlords out there don't do your laundry. She didn't do my laundry. I washed my own clothes in the basement. But I didn't say anything. I signed the paper. I set up automatic transfers. The first of every month. 2,700美元. I told myself, just 1 year, maybe 2. I'll pay off my student loans. Save money. Then move out. 8 years passed. But then, 1 year became 2. 2 years became 5. And suddenly, 8 years had passed. Every month, 2,700美元. Not once late. Every transaction time-stamped. Every payment recorded in my bank history. At the time, I had no idea that digital trail would later become so important. Life goes on. Those years passed like highway mile markers. I worked. I got promoted. From junior accountant, senior accountant, finance officer. My salary grew from $38,000 to $72,000 a year. I learned about auditing, grant compliance, nonprofit tax law. But my rent? It never changed. Once I asked my father, could the rent be lowered? He said, inflation. You should be grateful we haven't raised it. Meanwhile, Meredith's success. Meredith was thriving. She became a CPA, then opened her own accounting firm. She bought a condo in downtown Philadelphia. My parents paid the down payment. My mother said, Meredith works very hard. She deserves the help. At that point, I was 30 years old, had paid over $200,000 in rent, and still slept in a basement with a window facing a drain pipe. But Meredith deserved help. The most painful part, the worst part wasn't the money. It was the silence. So many times, I wanted to scream, ask why I had to pay market rent, while my sister was gifted money for a home. But every time I opened my mouth, fear squeezed my throat. If I said something, if I protested, would they stop loving me completely? So I stayed silent. I kept paying. I told myself, family means sacrifice. And sacrifice meant I was a good daughter. The Instagram post. Then one Sunday in October, I saw a photo on Meredith's Instagram. A picture of her apartment. The caption read, 2 years in my little paradise. Grateful to my parents for helping make this possible. 2 years. 2 years living freely. From the same people. Who took $2,400 from me every month. In that moment, something inside me cracked. 3 weeks later, I moved out. 6 months later, October 15. 6 months after I moved out, I returned to my parents' house to clean the autumn leaves. My mother had called 3 times about the clogged gutters. Your father's back isn't what it used to be. I was pulling weeds in the yard when Dorothy Brennan appeared at the fence. Tessa, haven't seen you in a while. I just came to help my parents. She smiled. Your parents must be proud to own that house outright. I froze. I'm sorry. What did you say? Mrs. Brennan laughed. The mortgage. It was paid off in 2014. My hands went cold. Mortgage paid in spring 2014. I started paying rent summer 2015. That night, in my tiny apartment, I opened my laptop, logged into the Montgomery County Property Database, public records, free, and there it was, right on the screen. Mortgage satisfied. The 12th of April, 2014. No debt, no mortgage, no loan, nothing. For 8 years, my parents had charged me $2,400 per month for a debt that did not exist. Total. 2,700美元. I sat in the dark for a long time. Then I picked up my phone and called someone. Someone who would change everything. But what I didn't expect was this. The forensic accountant I hired didn't just find where my money had gone. He also discovered who helped my parents hide it for 8 years. And when I saw the name signed on their tax filings, my heart almost stopped. Because it belonged to someone I trusted more than anyone in my family. Now I want to ask you something. If you discovered your parents had taken over $230,000 from you through lies, what would you do? Forgive them? Or expose everything? Write your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to hear what happened next when I discovered who helped them hide the money, follow along. Because in the next part, things get far more brutal. The report that took my breath away. That night, after discovering my parents' house had been fully paid off since 2014, I didn't sleep. I sat in my small apartment, my laptop open in front of me, numbers flickering across the screen. I started doing what every accountant does when something feels wrong. I checked the data, one transaction at a time. 0. 8 years of transfers. I opened my bank history. June 2015. $2,4. Rent. July 2015. $2,4. August 2013. $2,4. Rent. And it continued like that, month after month, year after year. Every transaction, identical. Not once late. Not once short. I added everything together. I stared at the number for a long time. $230,000. I could have bought a small house with that money. Instead, I used it to pay rent to my parents. For a house that no longer owed the bank anything, I called Lucia. The first person I called was Lucia Tran. Lucia has been my best friend since freshman year of college. Now, she's a legal assistant at a family law firm in Philadelphia. When she answered, I said immediately, "Lucia, I think my parents scammed me." She was silent for a few seconds. "Start from the beginning." So I told her everything. The rent, the house, the mortgage record showing it was already paid off. When I finished, Lucia let out a slow breath. "Wait, let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your parents charged you $2,400 a month for 8 years. Yes. They said it was to pay the mortgage. Yes. But the mortgage was already paid off before you started paying. Yes." Lucia stayed quiet for a long time. Then she said something that made my skin crawl. "This might not just be unethical. It could be tax fraud." "Tax fraud? Why?" I asked. Lucia explained. "If your parents received rental income, they're supposed to report it to the IRS. Rental income is reported on Schedule E. But if they didn't report it," she paused, "that's tax evasion." I sat there in silence. "The total is $230,000, Lucia said. "If they never reported that, the IRS would be very interested." I whispered, "But they're my family." Lucia answered immediately. "To the IRS, a transaction is still a transaction. The person Lucia recommended." Lucia gave me a name. Marcus Webb, a forensic accountant who specializes in family financial disputes. 3 days later, I was sitting in his office. Marcus Webb's office. Marcus Webb looked about 50. Deep voice. Slow. Precise. He wore reading glasses and flipped through the documents I had brought. I handed him 8 years of bank statements, transfer histories, the property records for the houses. Marcus read for a long time, occasionally writing notes. Finally, he looked up. "You labeled every payment? Rent?" "Yes." "Automatic transfers?" "Yes." Marcus nodded. "That means there's a complete financial trail." I swallowed. "What does that mean?" Marcus answered slowly. "It means that if this were investigated, no one could claim this was family support, because you clearly labeled it as rent." The question that stunned me. Marcus flipped through a few more pages. Then he asked, "Who prepares your parents' taxes?" The question hit me like a slap. I answered quietly, "My sister." Marcus frowned. "Name?" "Meredith Whitmore." "I think she's a CPA." Marcus set his pen down, removed his glasses, and looked directly at me. "Miss Whitmore, if your parents did not report rental income, and your sister signed the tax filings," he paused, "you have more leverage than you realize." My stomach turned cold, because in that moment, a terrifying possibility began forming in my mind. The engagement party. 3 days after my meeting with Marcus, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Cream-colored paper, gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to the engagement celebration of Had Meredith Ann Whitmore and Bradley Harrison Ashford III. Location: Briarwood Country Club, one of the most exclusive clubs in Philadelphia. The Ashford family is old money. Bradley's father is a famous estate attorney. Families like theirs appear in the society pages of newspapers. And my sister was about to marry into that world." My mother's call. My phone vibrated. Mom calling. "Tessa, did you receive the invitation?" "I just opened it." "You'll come, right?" "Of course." My mother exhaled with relief. Good. The entire Ashford family will be there. We need to present a united family. I almost laughed. A united family. After $230,000 in fake rent. The strange request. Then my mother added, "There's one more thing. Your father and I want you to say a few words about Meredith." I tightened my grip on the phone. A speech? Just a few sentences. Talk about what a wonderful example your sister is. About the bond between sisters. I closed my eyes. They wanted me to stand in front of 120 guests and praise the woman who may have helped hide the theft of my money. I'll prepare something, I said. After the call ended, I sat there for a long time, because by then, an idea had already begun to form. If they wanted me to speak in front of everyone, then maybe I would tell the truth. Marcus calls, 5 days before the party. Marcus called. "Tessa, the report is finished. I think you should come see it in person." I drove to his office during rush hour. Marcus placed a thick folder on the desk. "This is the summary," he said. "Your parents filed taxes from 2015 through 2023. There is no Schedule E, no rental income, no indication that the basement was ever rented." My throat went dry, but I paid them every month. Marcus nodded. "And that's the interesting part." He flipped to the final page. All those tax filings were signed by the same person. He turned the folder toward me. I looked down at the signature. Meredith A. My heart pounded in my ears. "She knew," I whispered. Marcus shook his head slightly. "Not just knew. She built the system. When a CPA signs a tax return, they are certifying that all information is accurate and complete." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "If this reaches the IRS, your sister's CPA license would be at serious risk." The speech invitation. I looked at the engagement invitation on the table. The party was in 5 days, and I had been invited to give a speech in front of everyone. Marcus asked, "What are you going to do with this information?" I thought for a long time. Then I said, "It seems like my family just built a stage for me." The night before the party. The night before the engagement party, I sat on the floor of my apartment. Around me were Marcus's report, bank statements, property records. Lucia called. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "I don't know. But I know one thing. Tomorrow, if they try to turn me into the grateful daughter, I'm telling the truth." Lucia was silent for a few seconds. Then she said, "Then I'll be sitting at table 7. As a witness. Question for you. Before I tell you what happened at that luxury engagement party, I want to ask you something. If you discovered your family had taken more than $230,000 from you through lies, and you had the chance to reveal the truth in front of 120 people at a major celebration, what would you do? Stay silent or expose everything? Write your thoughts. Because in next part, I walk onto the stage at Briarwood Country Club, and the words I said that night completely destroyed my sister's engagement party. The speech that destroyed the engagement party. Saturday night. The parking lot of Briarwood Country Club glowed under bright lights. Luxury cars lined up in long rows. Mercedes, Range Rover. I stepped out of my old Honda and stood for a few seconds at the entrance. Inside my handbag was a thick folder. Marcus's report, bank statements, copies of tax records, 8 years of my life, printed on paper. Inside the party, the ballroom was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling. Soft jazz music played in the background. About 120 guests were chatting. Laughter, champagne glasses clinking. Everything looked perfect. Like a happy family. My family. My mother stood near the center table. She wore a dark blue dress. When she saw me, she immediately smiled. "Tessa, you're here." She hugged me tightly. Too tightly. As if she wanted to make sure I wouldn't cause trouble. My father stood behind her. He patted my shoulder lightly. "Good. The Ashford family is important. Remember what you're going to say." I nodded. "I remember." Across the room, my sister Meredith stood beside her fiancé. The diamond ring on her hand sparkled under the lights. When she saw me, Meredith walked over. "Tessa." She hugged me, her voice sweet as honey. "You're giving the speech tonight. I'm really happy you're doing that." I looked straight into her eyes. "So am I." The man my sister was marrying, Meredith's fiancé, stepped forward. "Bradley Ashford." He extended his hand. "Finally, nice to meet you." Bradley was tall and polished. He spoke with the calm confidence of someone raised in wealth. Meredith told me you're an accountant. Yes. He smiled. Our family values people who understand finances. That sentence almost made me laugh. The party begins. After about an hour, the event host picked up the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, today we gather to celebrate the engagement of Meredith Whitmore and Bradley Ashford. Applause filled the room. And now, we'll hear a few words from the bride-to-be's younger sister. My mother turned to me, her smile tight with tension. Go. I stood up, holding my papers, and walked to the stage. 120 people watching me. I stood in front of the microphone, 120 faces looking up at me. The Ashford family sat at the central table. My parents were at the table to the left. Meredith stood beside Bradley. She raised her champagne glass, smiling, waiting for me to praise her. I took a deep breath. The speech begins. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight. For those who don't know me, my name is Tessa Whitmore, Meredith's younger sister. A few soft laughs. The atmosphere was still relaxed. I continued. I spent a long time thinking about what I should say tonight. Because Meredith always says, family is the most important thing. Meredith nodded proudly. The story I told. For the past 8 years, my family has taught me many lessons about money. Some people laughed. They thought I was joking. I continued. For example, they taught me that if you pay $2,400 in rent every month, then the house must still have a mortgage. The conversations in the room slowed. Meredith frowned slightly. The first number. I paid that amount. For 8 years. I looked down at my paper. $2,400 per month. 96 months. Which comes to... I looked up. Arshasenwenling Sibai Mayuan. The room began to fall silent. The first truth. I always believed that money was helping my parents pay the mortgage on their house. I turned toward my parents. They were staring at me, a warning in their eyes. However, I discovered something very interesting. I held up a document. The property records for that house. I paused. The mortgage was fully paid off in 2014. Whispers spread across the room. Meredith's face changed. Meredith took a step toward the stage. Tessa, she whispered. But I kept going. I started paying rent. In 2015, 1 second of silence. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Then the entire room began whispering. The second blow. I thought maybe this was just a family misunderstanding. Until I looked at the tax records. I lifted another sheet. For 8 years. There was no rental income reported. A man at the Ashford table frowned. He was probably a lawyer. The sentence that exploded everything. I looked directly at Meredith. And the most interesting part. Is that the person who signed all those tax returns? I raised the paper. Was Meredith Whitmore, CPA. A sharp gasp came from somewhere in the room. Meredith's face went pale. The room explodes. Voices erupted everywhere. What? Is that true? A CPA. Bradley turned toward Meredith. Meredith, what is this? My father jumped to his feet. Tessa. His voice thundered. That's enough. My final line. I looked around the room. 120 people, slowly falling silent. I just want to congratulate my sister, I said, because if you can help your parents take over $230,000 from your own sister and still throw a luxury engagement party like this, then you must have extraordinary financial skills. No one laughed. No one spoke. Only heavy silence. Meredith screams. Shut up. Meredith stormed toward the stage, her face burning red. Tessa, you're insane. This is my engagement party. I placed the microphone down. Yes. And I think everyone here deserves to know who you really are. Bradley asks one question. Bradley looked at Meredith. What she said. Is it true? Meredith didn't answer immediately. And in that moment, everyone in the room formed their own conclusion. The end of the party. My mother started crying. My father began shouting. The Ashford family gathered together at their table. Guests slowly began leaving. The engagement party ended 15 minutes later. I walked out. I walked out of the club. No one stopped me. But the story wasn't over. 2 days after the party, I received an unexpected phone call from someone I never imagined would contact me. Bradley Ashford's father, a famous estate attorney. And what he said to me next made everything much bigger than I ever expected. The call from the Ashford family. 2 days after the engagement party. My phone vibrated at 8:17 a.m. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at my laptop without actually working. 36 hours earlier, I had destroyed my sister's engagement party in front of more than 100 people. I knew consequences would come. I just didn't know where they would come from first. When I looked down at my phone, I saw an unknown number. I answered. Hello? The man's voice on the other end was deep and precise. Is this Tessa Whitmore? Yes, this is Charles Ashford. I sat up straight. Bradley's father. One of the most well-known estate attorneys in the city. Do you have a few minutes to talk? I swallowed. Yes. The unexpected conversation. Charles Ashford did not waste time. I'll be direct. What you said at the engagement party. We conducted a preliminary review. My heart started beating faster. And? He paused for a moment. It appears you were not lying. I exhaled. But then he continued. However, the issue doesn't end there. What concerned them? That evening, you stated in front of more than 100 people that Meredith Whitmore signed inaccurate tax filings. Yes. Do you have proof? I glanced at Marcus's folder sitting on my table. Yes. A short silence. Then he said, My family cannot allow my son to marry someone who may face serious legal risk. He paused. So we hired an independent audit team to review the records. A chill ran down my spine. Families like the Ashfords never do things halfway. The next question. Miss Whitmore, would you be willing to meet with us in person? Why? Because if what you said is true, this is not just a family dispute. He spoke slowly. It could become a major legal matter. The meeting. That afternoon, I walked into Charles Ashford's law office. The 24th floor of a glass tower. A luxurious reception area. Everything in that place radiated money and power. Inside the conference room were 3 people. Charles Ashford, Bradley, and a woman they introduced as a forensic auditor. Bradley looked at me. His expression was complicated. The polite smile from the party was gone. I presented the evidence. I placed the folder on the table. Bank statements. 96 transfers. Total. 230. 4 cents. The auditor opened the file. She reviewed each page. Very carefully. After about 10 minutes, she looked up. These transactions are very clear. They're all labeled rent. Direct bank transfers. Charles Ashford asked, Is there any indication this was simply family support? She shook her head. No. The next discovery. She flipped to the tax documents. The problem is here. For 8 years, there was no rental income reported. Charles Ashford looked at Bradley. Then he asked me, Do you know who prepared these filings? I answered, Meredith. The air in the room grew heavy. Bradley asked me, What do you want? He asked directly. Not angry, just cold. I thought for a moment. To be honest, I just want the truth to be acknowledged. I don't want to destroy anyone's life. Bradley looked at me for several seconds. Then he said quietly, But you already did. Another truth emerges. At that moment, the auditor spoke again. There's something else. She turned her laptop toward us. We reviewed the asset records of the Whitmore family. And we discovered something. She paused. Over the past 8 years, your parents purchased 2 additional rental properties. I froze. What? She nodded. Both properties are registered under Meredith Whitmore's name. The room suddenly felt like it was spinning. My money. We cannot say with absolute certainty, she said. But the timing of those property purchases, she pointed at a chart, almost perfectly matches the rent payments you made. I whispered, You mean? Charles Ashford finished the sentence. Your money may have been used to buy real estate for your sister. Bradley stands up. He walked to the window, looked down at the city, then said something that shocked me. I'm not marrying Meredith. No one spoke. He turned around. If this is true, I can't trust anything she's ever said. The war begins. Charles Ashford closed the folder. Miss Whitmore, my family will investigate this matter fully. I advise you to prepare. For what? Because when this becomes public, your family may face the IRS, the CPA licensing board, and civil lawsuits. He looked directly at me. And you may become the most important witness. But the biggest shock was still coming. That evening, when I returned to my apartment, a car was parked outside. My father stood beside it. He had never come here before. When I stepped out of my car, he said something that made my blood run cold. "You think you've won?" I didn't answer. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You still don't know the whole truth." I frowned. "What truth?" My father's sigh hid. Then he said something I never expected to hear from him. "That house isn't the only asset connected to your money. The 20-year secret." My father stood outside my apartment building. The pale yellow streetlight cast shadows across his face. I had never seen him look so tired before. Not angry, not proud, just tired. "Tessa," he said slowly, "you think you know the whole truth. But you don't." I crossed my arms. "Then say it." A strange question. My father looked at me for a few seconds. Then he asked something strange. "Do you remember when you were 12 years old?" I frowned. "Yes." "Do you remember what happened that year?" I thought for a few seconds. Then I said, "Mom got sick." He nodded. "That's right. The hospital. My mother was hospitalized for nearly 4 months. I remember that clearly, but I don't remember many details. What I do remember is the hospital visits, the smell of disinfectant, and Meredith always telling me not to worry." "Why?" I asked. My father looked down at the ground. "Because that year, our family almost went bankrupt. The debt." He spoke slowly. "Your mother wasn't just sick. She needed a complicated surgery. The insurance didn't cover everything. The total cost was nearly $180,000. I froze. I had never heard that number before. "The family's decision. We borrowed money," my father said. "From the bank, from relatives, and," he paused, "from a private investment fund." I frowned. "What fund?" "The Ashford Family Fund." My heart sank. "Why Meredith met Bradley?" "Meredith didn't meet Bradley by accident," my father said. "The Ashford family helped us many years ago. And Meredith always felt like she owed them something." I shook my head. "That still doesn't explain taking my money." My father nodded. "You're right. The painful truth." He looked at me, his eyes heavy. "After your mother recovered, we still owed over $120,000. It took years to repay it, and by 2014, we had finally paid everything off." Something clicked in my mind. "2014. That's the year the house mortgage was paid off." My father nodded. "But that wasn't the end. After that, Meredith had an idea." I looked at him. "What idea?" He took a deep breath. "She said if the family wanted to become truly stable, we needed to invest in real estate." I started to understand, but I didn't want to believe it. "Meredith's plan," Meredith said. "If you paid rent for the basement, we could use that money to buy rental properties." I laughed bitterly. "And no one thought to tell me?" My father didn't answer right away. "Finally," he said. "At first it was only supposed to be a year or two. But then, it became easier when you didn't ask questions." "The 2 houses. So your money was used as down payments for 2 rental houses," he said. "They were put under Meredith's name because she had the best credit." My throat tightened. 8 years. 8 years you let me believe I was just a tenant in my own family. Something my father said. "Tessa, we always planned to pay you back." I laughed. "How?" He took out his phone, opened a photo, then showed it to me. It was a house sale contract. One of the 2 rental properties. Sale price. $1,000,000. What I didn't expect. "The real estate market went up dramatically," my father said. "We planned to sell 1 house, to pay you back every dollar." I looked at him. "When?" he answered quietly. "Next week." "But the party ruined everything. After your speech, the Ashford family started investigating. If they report the tax issue, everything could collapse." I stayed silent. "One final question. Why didn't you tell me from the beginning?" I asked. My father took a long time to answer. Finally, he said, "Because Meredith believed. If you knew, you wouldn't agree." Silence. We stood outside the building. Neither of us spoke. Finally, my father said, "The family can still fix this. All you need to do is not push this any further." But at that moment, my phone vibrated. A message from Lucia. Just one line. "The IRS has just sent an official investigation notice." I looked at my father, then back at the screen. And in that moment, I realized something. This was no longer just about family. The IRS investigation. Lucia's message was still glowing on my phone screen. The IRS has just sent an official investigation notice. I read the sentence 3 times, as if staring at it long enough would make it disappear. But it didn't. My father was still standing in front of me. He saw the change in my expression. What happened? I handed him my phone. He read the message. His face went pale immediately. Real fear. No, he whispered. It can't happen that fast. I looked at him. How did you think this would end? He didn't answer, because both of us already knew. An IRS investigation is not a family argument. Meredith's call. Just a few minutes later, my phone vibrated again. The name on the screen. Meredith. I answered. What did you do? My sister's voice trembled with anger. I'm getting emails from the tax office. Tessa. Do you realize how serious this is? I replied calmly. I didn't call the IRS. Then who did? I thought of someone. The Ashford family. An uncomfortable truth. Maybe someone who cares a lot about tax compliance. I said. Meredith was silent for a few seconds. Then she shouted, You've destroyed my life. The investigation begins. 3 days later, an official letter arrived at my parents' house. A financial audit notice. They requested 8 years of tax records, bank statements, real estate documents, rental agreements. My father called me immediately. Tessa, we need to talk. The family meeting. For the first time since the party, we all sat together in the living room. Father, mother, Meredith, and me. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Meredith broke the silence. You have to withdraw your accusation. I looked at her. I didn't accuse anyone. But you said it in front of 120 people. Panic. My mother started crying. Our family is falling apart. My father rubbed his forehead. Meredith paced back and forth across the room. I could lose my CPA license. I said quietly, maybe you should have thought about that before signing false tax filings. An offer. After a while, my father spoke. We can fix this. I looked at him. How? He pulled out a stack of papers. We'll sell the 2 rental houses and return all the money to you. Meredith turned sharply. Dad, we don't have a choice. The real number. My father placed the papers on the table. After selling both houses, after paying off the loans, we can return about. He looked at me. 30,000,000 I stayed silent. It was more than the money I had paid. That wasn't the real issue. The important question. You think money can erase 8 years of lies? No one answered. Meredith stared at me, her eyes cold. What else do you want? What I wanted. I took a deep breath. I want one simple thing. You have to tell the truth to the IRS. Meredith almost laughed. You're insane. If I do that, I'll lose everything. I looked straight at her. You already took everything from me. The decision. No one said anything else. The meeting ended in silence. 3 days later, Meredith called me. Her voice was low. I'm going to amend the tax filings. I was surprised. Why? She gave a quiet laugh. Because the Ashford lawyers said if the IRS finds out first, it will be much worse. The consequences. Over the next 6 months, my family sold the 2 rental houses. The IRS imposed back taxes and penalties. Meredith's CPA license was suspended for 2 years. And the Ashford family called off the engagement. Bradley and Meredith never got married. 1 year later, 1 year after everything happened, I received a bank transfer. 30,000,000. Attached was a note from my father. Just 1 sentence. We should have told the truth from the beginning. But I learned something. Money can come back. Reputations can recover. But trust in a family, once it's broken, is very hard to rebuild. A question for you. If you were in my position, after everything that happened, would you forgive your family? Or would you cut them off completely? Tell me what you think, because sometimes, family stories don't have a right answer.